Dragon Emperor Sun Chapter 531 to Chapter 540. Who the hell are you? Su Shimao became more and more alarmed. Ha ha ha, it's okay to tell you who you are about to die. I am the third elder of Swanya Valley, and the girl who disappeared recently is all my fault. What can you do to me? The three elders laughed arrogantly. Su Shimao's face was extremely cold. He did not expect the third elder of Swanya Valley to act as a divination master in the sect, and the strength of Swanya Valley seemed to exceed the estimates of the Dharma Protector Pavilion. An elder is stronger than himself. Even if Su Shimao has the ability to reach the sky, it is impossible to destroy Swanya Valley. You must know that there are 4 elders in Swanya Valley, and the strength of the valley owner is even more unfathomable. Su Shimao didn't understand why Zhao Waoqi sent himself to investigate and destroy Swanya Valley. It was impossible for him to complete the task at all. In fact, Su Shimao didn't know that Zhao Waoqi didn't expect him to destroy Swanya Valley himself. He was counting on David to take action. As long as David took action, Swanya Valley would be destroyed. But this is the end. Su Shimao can only grit his teeth and carry it hard. The energy of the whole body is exerted to the extreme, and he fights with the 3 elders. However, no matter how hard Su Shimao worked, he still lost out. Bang! The third elder smashed Su Shimao's chest with a punch. Su Shimao flew out directly, and smashed heavily on the window, smashing the entire window. A mouthful of blood spurted out. Su Shimao wanted to get up, but he tried several times without success, and the subordinates he brought were also dead and wounded. I admire your Dharma Protector Pavilion, but you only sent a great master to provoke my Swanya Valley. Does this really ignore our Swanya Valley? The third elder walked in front of Su Shimao and stepped on Su Shimao's chest with 1 foot. Kill if you want to kill, what nonsense! Although Su Shimao was defeated, there was no panic in his eyes, and he said with a hideous expression, I heard that the Dharma Protector Pavilion is a hero, and it really lives up to its reputation, but I will not let you die happily. The third elder smiled coldly, and with 1 step, Su Shimao's ribs were instantly broken. The severe pain caused Su Shimao to sweat coldly, but he gritted his teeth and said nothing. Seeing this scene, Shen Mention's face became a little pale, and he turned his head to the side, unwilling to see this scene. Before leaving, Shen Mengchen still hated Su Shimao, but at this time, she hoped that Su Shimao would be fine. It's just that before she set off, she reminded Su Shimao that there was a bloody disaster, and it wasn't nonsense. Now it's fulfilled, it's just her own disaster, but she can't see it. At this time, David on the other side walked out of the resort and walked along a small stream towards the depths of Swanya Valley. There were fewer and fewer tourists, and the last person could no longer be seen. The towering mountains on both sides almost blocked it. The sun makes it a little dark in the canyon. David kept looking at the surrounding terrain, to check whether there were any aura fluctuations in the surroundings. You must know that many of these guys in Swanya Valley are warlocks, and they will also have weak aura fluctuations. As long as these people are nearby, David can feel it. Road. It would be even better if they could find Swanya Valley's old nest, but David knew that organizations like Swanya Valley were very secretive, and it was impossible for the old nest to be in such an urgent place. David continued to walk forward, and after walking for a while, waves of spiritual energy began to hit David, and the foot that David had just raised was put back again. Looking at the hollow canyon in front of him, David suddenly ejected a spiritual force from his fingers. After advancing several meters, the spiritual force seemed to have hit something, and suddenly a red light flashed, and the red light was like a spider. Like a net, it spreads in an instant, and then disappears. It even arranged a formation. David smiled coldly, turned around and walked back. In the sect lobby, the third elder of Swanya Valley looked at Su Shimao with a ferocious face, and his heart swelled to the extreme. Ha ha ha! It seems that my divination is getting better and better, even Shen Dianshan's physiognomy may not be my opponent. The third elder laughed, and he was so excited that he was able to catch Bai Zhantang and Shen Mengchen. "You'd better let us go, otherwise, the Bai family in the capital will never give up. You are a small Suanya Valley, and my Bai family will definitely be able to wipe you out." Bai Zhantang's face was pale, and he said with murderous intent in his eyes. "Eldest Master Bai, since I know your identity and dare to arrest you, do you think I will be afraid of your Bai family? I will use your little life to exchange a lot of medicinal materials with Yaoangfu. Yue Gu's strength will be even higher." The third elder looked at Bai Zhantang with a grin and said with disdain. Bai Zhantang was speechless. At this time, apart from glaring at the three elders to express his anger, he couldn't do anything else. His strength was too different from those of the three elders. Shen Mengchen leaned tightly on Bai Zhantang's body, trembling all over. "Your fortune-telling is so powerful, have you ever given yourself a date of death?" At this moment, an indifferent voice came in from outside. "Mr. Chen." When Bai Zhantang heard this, he was overjoyed and shouted vigorously. He knew that David was here, and they would be saved. "Who? Come out!" The third elder frowned and shouted sharply. "I saw David's figure slowly appear at the door, the rising sun shines on David's body, and the long shadow falls on the Buddha statue in the lobby. Who are you?" The third elder's eyes narrowed slightly, looking at David a little familiar, and then suddenly opened his eyes. "Are you David? I didn't expect you to know me." David was also a little surprised. How could this elder of Suanya Valley know him? "You killed me several generals in Suanya Valley, how could I not know you? I didn't expect you to dare to come to Suanya Valley, this is the way to heaven, you don't go, there is no door to H3LL, you break in." The momentum of the three elders suddenly came together, and his subordinates also surrounded David. David's name has become Suanya Valley's #1 enemy. "Don't talk about your little Suanya Valley, even if it's the real H3LL, I'll go if I want." As soon as David's voice fell, the whole person instantly turned into an afterimage. The Swanyu subordinates who surrounded David didn't see David's figure clearly, and they all fell to the ground. The third elder was startled, and even Su Shimao, who was stepping on his feet, had his eyes wide open. He never thought that David, a young man in his 20s, could be so terrifying. The three elders were afraid, and his face became ugly. David's strength has exceeded his imagination. Once in the Tianfeng town arena, they had seen David's strength through the illusion, but now it is less than a month. Ping's strength has grown so fast. "You people in Suanya Valley are not very strong, how dare you call yourself H3LL?" David smiled coldly and walked towards the third elder. "Don't come here, or I'll kill him." The third elder's eyes were full of horror, stepping on Su Shimao and threatening David. As long as he exerts force, Su Shimao will be directly trampled to death. "What does it have to do with me when you kill him? I'm not from the Guardian Pavilion. If you want to kill him, then kill him." David looked indifferent and continued to approach the three elders. "Don't come here, I will really kill him." The third elder was trembling slightly, his eyes were red, and he yelled at David. "Mr. Chen, kill him and destroy Suanya Valley, I don't want to die." Su Shimao said firmly. Heard or not, he himself is not afraid of death. David smiled. "What?" The third elder seemed to be crazy, he suddenly raised his foot and was about to step on it. Bang! David's figure flashed, and the third elder's body was instantly knocked out by a palm, smashing heavily on the Buddha statue, and shattering the Buddha statue. Su Shimao had already closed his eyes and was ready to accept death, but seeing that the three elders did not make a move, he slowly opened his eyes. He found that the three elders had long since disappeared, and standing in front of him was David. "Can you still stand up? If you can, don't play dead." David glanced at Su Shimao and said. Su Shimao gritted his teeth and stood up despite the severe pain. He only had a few broken ribs, but he could bear it. The third elder climbed up in the ruins, his face was extremely pale, and the blood kept flowing out of his mouth. It's time to send you on your way. No matter how good your divination is, you haven't been able to figure out that today is your death day. David smiled coldly. Pfft! The three elders knelt down in front of David all of a sudden. Don't kill me, I'm also forced, I was wormed by that Jianfeng, and I can't help it. As long as you don't kill me, I can take you into Suanya Valley. I know Suanya Valley's organs and how to close the formation. The three elders kept kowtowing to David. How could a small organ formation be able to stop me? It's useless to keep you. David said, raised his palm directly. Don't kill me, I know where the arrested girls are being held, I can let them all go, if it's a while later, they may all die. The three elders said hurriedly. David frowned and began to hesitate. If he killed these three elders now, maybe those girls who were caught would really die. Persistence was afraid of hesitation, and the three elders had a happy look in their eyes, and hurriedly crawled towards Shen Mengchen. Shen Mengchen was shocked when she saw the three elders crawling towards her, while Bai Zhantang guarded her and looked at the three elders vigilantly. Miss, I beg you to help me, I am also forced to helpless, that Jianfeng used goo insects to control us, we would not dare to resist, otherwise I would never betray your father. The three elders begged to Shen Mengchen, and he hoped that Shen Mengchen could also plead for himself at this time. Betraying my father. Shen Mengchen's eyes widened with a look of disbelief. You, what do you mean? Miss, we are the subordinates of Lord Shengu, and it was that Jianfeng who deliberately drove away the Lord Shengu. He occupied Suanya Valley himself, and used goo insects to control us, and that Jianfeng recently planned to subjugate Lord Shengu. Poisonous hands, so he has to catch you first, and then threaten Shen Guzu. The three elders explained. No, you are talking nonsense, Shen Mengchen couldn't believe it, and suddenly got up and glared at the third elder. You are all bad people, how could it be my father's subordinate, and isn't this Suanya Valley a resort? When did my father become a valley master? Shen Mengchen is an ordinary person, so she doesn't know many things. Shen Dianshan has been hiding it from her, he doesn't want his daughter to go his way. Otherwise, he wouldn't have sent Shen Mengchen to go to school in Kyoto. Miss, Suanya Valley is an organization, this resort is just a guise, the real Suanya Valley is still inside, this Suanya Valley was founded by Master Shengu. The three elders continued to explain. How could this be? Why did my dad lie to me? What else is he hiding from me? Shen Mengchen never dreamed that his father would actually be the owner of the valley. Stop talking nonsense, take me to get those girls out. David said coldly to the third elder. Good good. The three elders nodded again and again, got up and walked towards the back of the sect with David. Su Shimao gritted his teeth and followed behind, while Bai Zhantang helped the lost Shen Mengchen to follow. Walking behind the sect, there is a huge cliff, and the towering cliff gives a deep sense of oppression. I saw that the three elders walked to a cliff and tapped 3 times with their hands, and soon a door opened on the cliff. Inside is a cell, where a dozen girls are imprisoned, and when the cell door is opened, the dozen girls are all shrunk to the corner. The three elders took 2 steps inward, and the dozen or so girls all screamed in fright. Seeing this, David hurriedly took out the third elder with anger on his face. This is what Jianfeng asked me to do. Seeing David glaring at him, the third elder hurriedly defended. The soulless Shen Mengchen was stunned after seeing those girls. These girls were about the same age as her, but at this time, they were all in ragged clothes, just like beggars. Shen Mengchen walked in slowly, and the girls all quieted down when they saw that Shen Mengchen was also a girl. It's just a bunch of beasts. Looking at the situation of the girls, Shen Mengchen scolded Suanyuegu through gritted teeth. Soon, under the comfort of Shen Mengchen, the girls all came out. Just after walking out of the prison, the girls fled like crazy, for fear of being arrested again. They did not give David and the others time to reflect. David wanted to send someone to escort these girls back, but now the girls have all run away. David looked at the three elders. Now take me to your lair. The third elder hesitated for a while, and finally nodded his head with gritted teeth. If you dare to play tricks, I will make your life worse than death. David saw that the three elders hesitated and thought he was going to play tricks. Don't dare, the third elder waved his hands again and again. It's just that I have goo worms on my body. Now that Jianfeng knows my whereabouts very well, if I go back to the valley at this time, I'm afraid he will become suspicious. Then I'll take the goo worms from you first. David said. This goo worm was brought by Jianfeng from Miao village. It has been in my body for several years, sucking my blood and essence, and it has become one with my body, so I can't get it out at all. The three elders shook their heads. Stretch out your hand. David said to the third elder. Although the third elder did not know what David was doing, he still stretched out his palm obediently. I saw David pinching his fingers, and a faint red light appeared on the fingertips, and then David pointed at the palm of the third elder, and the red light instantly entered the body of the third elder. The third elder trembled, and then his expression became extremely painful. I saw that red light roaming quickly in the third elder's body, as if chasing after something. What? Suddenly, the third elder opened his mouth and screamed, and the bright red bug spit out from his mouth. As soon as the bug saw the sunlight, a burst of red smoke appeared and died. Looking at the dead goo worms on the ground, the third elder's eyes widened. He couldn't believe it was true. Okay, your goo worm is gone, you can leave now. David said lightly. The third elder knelt down to David with a thud, and kowtowed desperately. Over the years, he has been controlled by goo insects, and he has done a lot of detrimental things. His heart is extremely tormented, but in order to survive, he can only obey Jianfeng's instructions. Take out your goo worm, I'm not saving you, whether you can survive depends on your own performance. David said coldly. I understand. The three elders nodded again and again. The three elders took David and the others toward the depths of Swanyu Valley. At this time, in the hall of Swanyu Valley base camp, Jianfeng was playing chess with the great elder. This is what Jianfeng likes to do when he is free. It's time to get the secret book and destroy that Shen Dianshan. You guys should catch his daughter as soon as possible. I have already received the news that his daughter has returned from Kyoto. Jianfeng said to the elder. The third child is already preparing, I believe it will take a few days to get results. The elder said respectfully. By the way, why has it been so long that more than 20 girls can't handle it? Jianfeng asked slightly angrily. Guzu, I have already asked, and you know that in today's society, girls are very open, and the third child has caught a lot of girls, but unfortunately few of them are complete, so it's a bit slow. The elder explained. Humph, these shameless women. Jianfeng snorted coldly, picked up a chess piece and dropped it. But at this moment, there was a sudden movement in the clay pot beside Jianfeng, and the goo worms inside seemed to be frightened. Jianfeng was stunned for a moment, hurriedly opened it, and his expression changed instantly. Goo master, what's the matter? The elder asked. Jianfeng stretched out his hand and took out a huge goo worm from the clay pot, frowned and said, the third elder is dead. What? Is the third child dead? The great elder's face was full of disbelief. This is his goo worm. Now that the goo worm is dead, it proves that the third elder is dead. Who killed him? Jianfeng said with a gloomy face. Could it be someone from the Dharma Protector Pavilion in Kyoto? We killed a lot of people in the Dharma Guardian Pavilion recently. It may be someone from the Dharma Guardian Pavilion in Kyoto. The elder thought for a while. It's possible. Jianfeng nodded, take someone to take a look. If you are really from the Dharma Protector Pavilion in the capital, don't conflict with them first. If Zhao Waoqi leads the team in person, it will be troublesome. Our current strength is still there. It is not enough to fight against the Dharma Protector Pavilion in the capital, and we must avoid its edge for the time being. Qian Feng ordered to the elder. Okay. The elder got up, turned and walked out. Humph, when I learn the 5 poisons Da Fa, what is the Kyoto Dharma Protector Pavilion? A chill flashed in Qian Feng's eyes. The 3 elders took David and they had already left the resort and arrived at the hinterland of Swanya Valley. David had been here before, and there was a formation in front of him, which should have served as a warning. Mr. Chen, there is a formation in front of you. As long as a stranger breaks in, Qian Feng will know. I will open the formation first. After the 3 elders finished speaking, they walked towards a stone wall. Don't be so troublesome. David said lightly, flicking his fingers, and a red light blazing out. After touching the formation, the red light spread rapidly, and then disappeared. After doing all this, David said lightly, let's go. The 3rd elder had an incredible look in his eyes, his Adam's apple rolled twice, and then continued to lead the way. Su Shimao, who has been following behind, looks at David's strength at this time, and his face is hot. He has always regarded David as a weak son, but he does not want David's strength to be so strong. Now he can understand why Zhao Wuji asked him to take David, why he dared to send him to bring people to destroy Swanya Valley, because of David's existence, so Zhao Wuji is relieved. After continuing to walk for hundreds of meters, the light became even darker, and the temperature was getting lower and lower, making people feel an eerie coolness. Shen Mengchen tightened her collar coldly, and Bai Zhantang took advantage of the situation to hug Shen Mengchen, so that she could be warmer, and Shen Mengchen didn't struggle. Who dares to trespass my Swanya Valley? Suddenly there was an angry shout, and then not far in front of David and the others, 3 old men appeared, each of them extraordinary. Big brother! The 3 elders hurriedly shouted. The 3rd child? Aren't you already dead? The elder said in surprise. He clearly heard that Qian Feng said that the 3rd elder was dead, and that Gu insect was also dead. How could he appear in front of him? Brother, I'm not dead, listen to my explanation. The 3 elders hurriedly stepped forward. David was afraid that the 3 elders were playing with some scheming, so he hurriedly followed, and he was only 1 step away from the 3 elders. As long as the 3 elders dared to make a difference, David could kill him with 1 palm. As the distance got closer, the 3 elders also saw the appearance of David behind the 3rd elder. David! The 3 elders were like a formidable enemy, and they burst into battle. Big brother, 2nd brother, 4th brother, don't do it yet, let me explain to you. The 3rd elder hurriedly stopped the 3 of them, and then explained, Brother, I didn't die at all, it was Mr. Chen who forced the goo worm out of my body, and the goo worm died when it saw the sunlight, so the Qian Feng pottery jar was inside. The goo worms will also die. How is it possible, that goo worm has been sucking our blood essence in our body for many years, and it has long been integrated with the body, how could it be forced out? The elder does not believe it at all. Brother, is it okay for me not to live well? It's all true. We don't have to be controlled by that Qian Feng anymore, and the daughter of Lord Shengu is here. The 3rd elder pointed to Shen Mengchen and said. The 3 elders looked at Shen Mengchen with gloomy expressions on their faces. They didn't know what to do for a while. Big brother, in order to survive, we have helped Qian Feng to do a lot of harming things. Back then, Gu Zhu was very kind to our brother. Now that we can get out of the control of Gu insects, why should we sacrifice our lives for Qian Feng? Seeing that the 1st elder didn't speak for a while, the 3 elders persuaded him in a hurry. Because he knows that if they really want to fight, they are definitely not David's opponents. David's strength has already exceeded their imagination. The 1st elder looked hesitant. In order to survive, they had been wronged for so many years. Although they had a chance to get rid of their control now, he did not dare to gamble. If he lost the gamble, it would be the price of his life. Qian Feng would not let them go, even if they after fleeing to the ends of the earth, his life is still in the hands of Qian Feng. I'm coming. When the first elder hesitated, the fourth elder took a step forward, looked at David and said, David, if you can really force the goo worms out of my body, and you are not controlled by that Qian Feng, I don't have to do anything with you. Enemy, if you dare to lie to us, then don't blame our brothers for being rude to you. Are you threatening me? David asked coldly. You can understand that. The fourth elder nodded. Do you have any other choices besides listening to me? You are also worthy of being my enemy. David waved his hand suddenly, and the body of the four elders walked towards David completely uncompromisingly, and was directly pinched by David's neck. The sudden change shocked everyone. The four elders' eyes were wide open, and the whole person was stupid. He didn't realize what was going on, and he became a prisoner. Mr. Chen, don't be angry. The three elders were so frightened that they hurriedly stopped David. David, what are you going to do? Let go of my fourth brother. The first elder and the second elder showed their weapons together and looked at David with full attention. The faces of the two of them are also extremely ugly. David shot, but they didn't have time to react. The difference in strength between them is self-evident. In the future, I don't want anyone to threaten me again, because I hate threats. As soon as David let go, the fourth elder's body fell to the ground with a thud. The pale-faced fourth elder walked through the gate of H3LL for a while, and now he can't even stand up. The third elder hurriedly helped the fourth elder up. Just listen to me, I didn't lie to you. The first elder saw David let go, put away the weapon, looked at David and said, Okay, we are willing to listen to Mr. Chen, I hope Mr. Chen can force the goo worms out of our body. The first elder finally gave in and said respectfully to David. Put your hand out. David said lightly. The first elder was stunned for a moment, and the third elder hurriedly explained, Big brother, this is Mr. Chen trying to force out goo worms for you. When the elder heard this, he hurriedly stretched out his hand, David flexed his finger, a red light entered the body of the elder, followed by a burst of pain, and finally the elder suddenly opened his mouth, and a scarlet bug came out of his mouth. After the worm fell to the ground, it quickly ran towards the dark place, because the sunlight could not come in here, so the goo worm did not die. David lifted his foot and directly crushed the goo worm to death. Seeing this scene, several elders were dumbfounded. They didn't expect that David could actually force out goo worms. Puff, puff. The second elder and the fourth elder hurriedly knelt down to David. I beg Mr. Chen to help us force out goo worms too. After so many years of worrying about living, who would like to do this, who would like their lives to be held by others, and if they are unhappy, they may die. Stretch out your hand. David said lightly. The second and fourth elders hurriedly stretched out their hands, and David used the same method to force the goo worms out of their bodies. This time, the four elders were all excited and thanked David. In the Swanya Valley Hall on the other side, Qian Feng always felt uneasy, his eyelids twitched violently, as if something had happened. Someone! Qian Feng shouted. Goo Master! Immediately, someone came in. Did the first elder lead someone to check? Qian Feng asked. The first elder brought the second elder, and the fourth elder has already gone to check. The next man said. Yet. Qian Feng waved his hand. But just as the servants had just left, Qian Feng found that the pottery was overturned for a while, and there was a lot of movement. Such a thing had never happened before. Qian Feng was startled, and hurriedly opened the pot, and found that the three huge goo worms inside were all dead, and the three goo worms inside were the largest. How is this possible? Qian Feng's eyes were full of shock, followed by anger. Who killed all four of my elders? Qian Feng suddenly raised his head and roared, the roar resounded throughout Swanya Valley. David, who had arrived near Swanya Valley's old nest, also heard Qian Feng's roar. The first elder was stunned for a moment, and then said to David, Mr. Chen, after passing the Handan in front, the back is where Qianfeng is, but Mr. Chen must be careful, there are many Qianfeng in the Handan. Poison, if you take a bite, it will kill you immediately. These poisons will not bite people who have goo worms in their bodies, and now that our body goo worms are forced out, I'm afraid it won't go away. Then you usually go in and out, do you still have to row a boat? David asked inexplicably. Yes, they all go in and out by boat, but I heard that there are stone pillars in this cold pool, and you can also step on the stone pillars to pass through, but no one knows the location of this stone pillar except Qianfeng. The elder said. This Qianfeng is quite cautious. David smiled lightly. After the group arrived at Handan, the temperature here was lower, and I saw that Handan divided the canyon in two. To enter the other side, you had to cross the Handan. It was cold in the cold pool, and the entire water surface was foggy, and I couldn't see anything clearly, only a few boats were floating on the side. Mr. Chen, look! The first elder said, picked up a stone and threw it into the cold pool. The water splashed, and then a few black shadows sprang out of the water, and then quickly fell back and disappeared. These are all poisons raised by Qianfeng. These poisons are all obtained by him from Miao village. I heard that Qianfeng has something to do with Miao village. The great elder continued to speak to David. Even if he has something to do with God, he will surely die today. David's face was firm. You wait here, I will go by myself. After David finished speaking, he was about to jump up and jump onto a small boat when he suddenly found a group of people across from Handan, and then they all got on the boat and came towards the opposite side. Qianfeng, it's Qianfeng. When the first elder saw the people on the first boat, his face was slightly startled. After all, after being controlled by Qianfeng for so many years, there is still fear in my heart. At this time, Qianfeng also found the four elders and David, and frowned slightly. Aren't the four of you dead? What's going on? Qianfeng's voice was cold and indifferent, and a cold glow erupted in his eyes. The four elders looked at each other, none of them dared to make a sound, and there was panic in their eyes. Seeing this, David looked at Qianfeng and said, Are you Qianfeng, the owner of this Suanya Valley? Yes, who is your excellency? Qianfeng looked at David solemnly. My name is David Chen. As soon as David's voice fell, he saw that Qianfeng's body trembled slightly, and then endless anger broke out in his body. So you are David who killed my Dharma protector? Qianfeng glared at David, and then looked at the four elders suspiciously. What's the matter with the four of you? Why don't you take him down quickly? None of the four elders moved, and no one dared to move. They had experienced David's strength, and the four of them were not opponents together. Seeing the four elders do not move, Qianfeng's eyes narrowed slightly, as if thinking of something. I didn't expect someone to break my goo worm, no wonder these four guys are disobedient, but even if you can break my goo worm again, how about, come to Suanya Valley, this is your grave. This is your grave. This is your grave. Qianfeng's voice was incomparably loud and reverberated throughout Suanya Valley. The water in the entire Handan actually began to boil, as if it were boiling for nothing, and it scared Bai Zhantang and the four elders to retreat. David looked at Qianfeng indifferently, his eyes flickering coldly. Whose tomb is here? It's too early to make a conclusion now. After speaking, David jumped up and landed on a small boat. With a slight wave of his palm, the boat quickly drove towards Qianfeng. Mr. Chen, be careful, you must not fight him on Handan. Seeing this, the first elder hurriedly warned David. You traitors, I will tear you to pieces. Qianfeng was furious, his palms shoved abruptly, a huge momentum swept the water in the entire cold pool, the monstrous waves smashed towards David, and the poison in the cold pool also came out of the water one after another, towards the four big lakes on the shore. The elders and Bai Zhantang left. Retreat! When the first elder saw this, he was so frightened that he hurriedly shouted and quickly backed away. Seeing this, David suddenly lifted his body, and then quickly stepped back. While stepping back, he also waved his hands, and the endless momentum directly suppressed the monstrous waves. The cold pool has returned to calm, but at this time, on the surface of the pool, a wave appeared, and then moved towards Qianfeng like a sharp arrow. This wave seemed to cut open the entire cold pool. Seeing this, Qianfeng jumped up, and the boat under his feet instantly shattered under the waves. Qianfeng avoided, but the men behind him suffered disaster. The waves directly overturned the boat, and the people on the boat were like being twisted by a sharp weapon. In the cold pool. The poison in the cold pool smelled blood, and rushed out, eating all the limbs that fell in the cold pool. The rest of the people in Swanya Valley were so frightened that they turned pale in an instant, and hurried back to the shore. Sure enough, there is some ability, no wonder I can betray my 4 elders. Qianfeng smiled coldly in mid-air, and then his figure slowly fell to the surface of the water, standing on the water. If the elder hadn't told David long ago that there are stone pillars in the water, David would have thought that Qianfeng's strength was so strong that he could stand on the water. David's body also fell slowly, but he landed on a floating wooden board. Standing on the water, David could do it, but if he didn't take advantage of it, David would have to consume a lot of spiritual power in his body to support it. Myself, there are a lot of debris scattered over the entire Handan now, so David can save a lot of effort with just a little leverage. David looked at Qianfeng, his eyes burst into flames, and said with disdain, bullying the teacher and destroying the ancestors, betraying the teacher's sect, you are also worthy of saying the word betrayal, it's a joke. Qianfeng was stunned for a moment, but then grinned, I didn't expect you to have seen that Shen Dianshan, but you can't trust that old man, he's no fun, you think he founded Swanya Valley, really is it a famous and upright one? He is just relying on his own physiognomy to be deceived and deceived. I see that you are young and powerful. Why don't you cooperate with me? I can keep your strength to a higher level, which is better than helping the old Shen Dianshan. He is just using you. So, I killed you people in Swanya Valley, you won't pursue it. David said with a playful smile. Haha, the people you killed are nothing more than pediatrics in my Swanya Valley. In my eyes, they are just chess pieces, and they are no different from the goo insects I raised. If you kill them, kill them. You can force out my goo worms to prove that you also understand these poisons, as long as you cooperate with me, I can introduce you to the Miao Village Poison King, and let him teach you the art of poison control. Qianfeng laughed and kept throwing out olive branches. Just the strength that David showed just now is enough for Qianfeng to value, such a strange person, Qianfeng really wants to take it for his own use. Do you know people from Miao Village? David wondered. It's more than just knowing, the Miao Village Poison King is my adoptive father. I came to Swanya Valley with a self-destructed appearance, nothing more than hoping to get the resources of Swanya Valley. Soon this Swanya Valley will become the second Miao. It's over. Qianfeng said proudly. Hey, it seems that after killing you, I have to make revenge with Miao Village. It's really annoying. David frowned slightly. There were too many things during this time, and he didn't have enough time to practice. Seeing that July 15th was coming, although he had reached the foundation building stage, he heard Shen Dianshan say that he was on July 15th. In the event of catastrophe, David thought that his strength was improving a little, and he would also have the confidence at that time. What did you say? Qianfeng's face turned cold, you can kill me, it's just a joke. After Qianfeng finished speaking, his toes lightly touched the surface of the water, the whole person rose into the air again, and then waved his palms, the water in the cold pool boiled again, and then condensed into a huge wave, heading towards David. The power and speed of this huge wave is not worse than the wave that David just waved. This huge wave is like a big truck traveling at high speed, slamming into David. David shook his head slightly, stretched out his hand to grab it, and countless pools of water actually condensed into a water sword in David's hand. "Break me!" With a wave of the long sword in David's hand, the huge wave was directly divided into two, passed directly through David's body, and rushed towards both sides. Rumbling! Being hit by a huge wave that was divided into two, it even shattered the boulders on the shore, which shows how powerful this huge wave is. When Bai Zhantang and the others on the shore saw this scene, they all became nervous and sweated for David. Now if David is defeated, then one of them will not even want to live. "Okay, go ahead!" Qian Feng shouted angrily. His body fell directly from the air, and he punched the surface of the water fiercely. The huge impact force made the pool water form ripples, which began to spread continuously, and the agitated water droplets, it also shot towards David overwhelmingly, like a dense bullet. Now that the foot and the face are attacked at the same time, the corner of David's mouth is raised, his body jumps up directly, and then his arms spread out like wings. Curtain wall. The ripples spread from David's feet, and those bullet-like water droplets all hit the water curtain and fell back into the pool. The huge ripples spread to the shore, causing the entire canyon to tremble slightly. "It seems that you are stronger than I thought." David's eyes narrowed slightly. From Qian Feng's attack, he felt a wave of spiritual power fluctuations. Although the warlock's body would also generate spiritual power fluctuations when urging the formation, but all of them were minimal, and the average warlocks are very good at cultivating inner strength, so once the spell is broken, warlocks will only be slaughtered. However, this Qian Feng not only knows the technique, but his body can actually burst out with such great power. Now the spiritual power fluctuations of Qian Feng's body are almost close to those of immortal cultivators. My strength, you can never imagine." Qian Feng smiled coldly, and his body floated onto the pool of water. David also borrowed strength and stepped on a small wooden board. Seeing David like that, Qian Feng's eyes were full of confidence. "Really? Then let me see your true strength." David grabbed his body towards the pool, as if he had caught something, and waved it towards Qian Feng. When David waved his hand, a water column jumped up from the cold pool, as if he was caught by David. The huge water column was like a steel whip, slashing towards Qian Feng. The water column was several meters long, flashing with a faint cold glow. Seeing this, Qian Feng quickly slapped his palms towards the pool water. The pool water instantly set off huge waves, and then a water curtain wall appeared in front of Qian Feng. Bang! The huge water column in David's hand slammed hard on the water curtain wall in front of Qian Feng, making a loud noise, tearing the water curtain wall abruptly. Qian Feng's face was startled, and his body quickly retreated. The water column that was several meters long was pumped above the water surface, and the splash was more than 10 meters high. Although he avoided a blow, the energy contained in the water column caused a burning pain in Qian Feng's chest, and there were gaps in his clothes. "Is this your true strength?" David said with an indifferent sneer on his face. Qian Feng's face became a little ugly. "I haven't shown my true talents yet. Have you forgotten that I am the adopted son of the Miao Village Poison King?